just a couple of things as we're gonna get started. Well, we're just gonna get started. So right off the bat here, I do want to say, there we go. As a disclaimer, the following graphics do not belong to me. I actually pulled them off of the web. They're free graphics that are just you're able to Google and find. None of these pictures represent any one person, so I have to make that completely transparent to you guys. But also all the information that's going to be provided today is based off of our own personal experience and what is public knowledge. Okay? So just to get started, we also have some important dates to go through. Early voting starts October 19th, and it'll go through November 1st. And then the generals is going to be the day of November 5th. And they have until November 12th. Actually, it's not even they, it's we. We have until November 12th for ballot curing. And so ballot curing is basically if your vote got kicked out because of signature verification, there could have been a discrepancy or whatever it is, they post your information on the public website on the Clark County Elections Department. And if your name is on there, you have until November 12th to call in and verify your vote in order for it to count. Does that make sense? So those are some important dates for you to remember. So, you guys are all here for observations to the Clark County Central Processing Center. So thank you guys so much. There's a couple of things as far as why we do election observations. And one of those is that it's a valuable tool for improving the quality of elections. The more things that we go in and see is the more things that not only are we aware of, but the things that we can change, the things that we can let our elected officials know that these are things that are wrong. It helps build public confidence, and in our case, we have very little public confidence in our election system. It helps promote and protect the civil and political rights of participants in the election. So this is one of our rights. If we're going to have free and fair elections, we have that right to go in and observe what is happening to our ballot. It could lead to the correction of errors, like I've mentioned before. We've been doing this since 2022, and every election that we've gone through, there's been something different. Something has changed. Something new is happening. And really, that's not a bad thing. It just means that, the more reports that we're giving is the more that they're changing it. So, and ultimately, that's our goal. Our goal is to make sure that we have safe and secure and elections that are of integrity, right? And then, of course, the more people that are there to observe, it can deter manipulation and fraud. And then, of course, we expose all the problems when they do end up occurring, right? So who are observers? According to NRS 293-274, observers are any member of the public, right, that wish to observe the election process. Now, any member of the public does not specifically mean to here in Nevada. Any member of the public literally means any member of the public. And so when we're going into these elections, and especially this is a big one that we're going up against right now for the presidential election, you will see that there's people coming in from California, from Washington, from Arizona. There's going to be a whole bunch of people from everywhere, right? So it's not specific to Nevada. Anybody can go in. Whether you're a resident here or not, whether you're a citizen here or not, you are able to go into that election. Now, and again, there's no credentials are required. So this isn't this, your guys are going to graduate today and get a certificate and be able to walk in. Anybody can go with zero or too little information and be able to figure things out from there. All right? Okay, so there's two types of observations. One is at the polling locations, and this is the most common type of observations. This is what happens when you go out to the polling locations that are located all throughout the valley. Typically, you have to stand within 50 to 100 yards away from the tent. You can't talk to your friends. You can't, be on your phone and blah, 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 blah. This is going to be totally different because the second one that we have right now is at the elections department. So this is located inside of the Central Processing Center. And as of right now, I'm the only organization that's going to be running in and taking a team out here. Now, I'm going to preference this. I didn't put this in my notes or anything, but the reason why we're doing what we're doing is because we actually were a part of a lawsuit. I was part of a lawsuit, and we won that right to go into our elections department. We won the right to go in and observe. And so not a lot of people know about this opportunity, and that's why it's something different. And again, what happens on the outside, what happens in the polling locations is totally different than what happens here. And so we want to be able to maintain our integrity of the ballot, because essentially whatever happens on the outskirts, it all gets filtered into one location. And because Clark County is such a huge county, we only have one processing center here, and it's that one, okay? So, with that said, the Central Processing Center is actually located at 965 Trade Drive. It's off of Washington and MLK. It's actually closer to that Revere Drive and Cheyenne. What did I say? Washington and MLK? Yeah. So Cheyenne and Revere Drive. So it's right over there. When you are coming in, and a little bit of my PowerPoint might have gotten a little bit chopped off here, but when you're coming in, if you can see, you're actually going to come in on either this side, if you're following me, this side or this side, but typically right now, this whole entire thing is fenced off. That's something new. This just happened last week. And so what they're going to try to do is you're going to have one way in and one way out. And so essentially you're going to go in this way. This whole thing right here is the building, and then you're going to be able to go around and then go out that way. So with that now said, in the front right here, oh, there we go. There's the little cars, right? So go in that way, and then there in the front right there, that's where all of the parking is going to be. So you're going to be able to park right there. I put it as close to the right-hand side. That's your guys' right. That right-hand side right there, because this is like a cute little diagram, because of course they don't have anything available on their, to give us as far as what everything's going to look like. But closest to the right-hand side is going to be where the entrance is. So if you're coming down this way, you're going to go down this way. This right here is going to be the front parking, and you're going to park nearest, this is Revere Street right here. That right there is going to be the new entrance. Revere Street, yeah. So that's going to be the new entrance right there. This right here was a diagram of what was for the presidential preference primary. This diagram stayed the same for our primary in June, and we're going to assume that it's going to stay the same for November, but there is nothing to guarantee that, okay? So with that said then, these are going to be all the different rooms that you're going to be able to observe, whether it's when you go in, you're going to sign in. You will be able to review the Agilis room, the counting board room, the ballot duplication, the counting board signature verification, tabulation, and there's like a small little silver window of adjudication. So those are going to be all of the rooms that are going to be available to you. Again, this is inside. There is seating, but we'll talk about that in just a minute. So when we're preparing for observations, things to bring a friend, okay? That's number one. Make sure that you guys are not going in by yourselves. Bring a friend with you. Bring 2, bring 3, bring 5. I don't care. Bring the whole neighborhood. But don't go in alone. And we'll talk about why in a minute, but make that number one priority. Number 2, make sure you have a pen and a paper, because everything that's going on right now, you want to make sure that you're jotting down. You want to make sure that you're taking notes, right? You can bring in your glasses. If you have like bifocal glasses, or maybe they might even have like secret binocular capabilities, that's cool, but you cannot bring in binoculars themselves, right? You can bring a water or a closed lid drink, and then it does get chilly. I don't know how chilly it's going to be right now because it's still so hot outside. But when we did this in November of 2022, it was freezing and we were in our jackets. So, this is a very casual event, very relaxed. Just make sure that you're staying warm. Okay, so things not to bring. You cannot bring your cell phone, your laptop, your computer. You cannot bring in any of that. If you do bring in your cell phone, you have to put that in your back pocket, and you are not allowed to touch that. If you have a phone call and you have to answer it, you are going to have to leave the building and step outside to be able to take that phone call or respond to that text. Even on your watches, you're not going to be able to play with that. So yeah, keep that in mind. If you have those smart watches, you're not going to be able to play with that. You cannot bring any spyware in, so not any voice recorders or hidden cameras, because you will have to go through a security, and it is like TSA style. They've got the security that's there, right? And so you can't bring in a voice recorder, any hidden cameras. Don't worry, I have to put this out there because somebody has actually already tried. And again, with the binoculars, you can't bring in binoculars. You cannot bring in your firearms. You cannot bring in any Swiss Army knives. And again, I have to say this because it's already been done. And then you cannot bring in any campaign, patriotic, or religious apparel. And this is something, campaign has always been. Patriotic and religious apparel is something that just happened during the last primary in June, where we've had people being kicked out or asked to turn their shirts inside out. So just keep that, we're not in there to, persuade anybody to vote the way that we are. We're literally, you guys are spies, okay? We're going in undercover. So you don't want everybody to know what your party of affiliation is, because I promise you, you're going to be treated worse than what is already expected, okay? So just keep that in mind. All right, so observer requirements. One, again, you're going to be checked in through security, so make sure you don't have any of the things that we mentioned already. You will be required to sign in. You only have to sign in just your name. The sign-in form will ask you, what organization you're with or what your party of affiliation is. You do not have to answer that. You do not have to answer. You don't have to put down that you're Republican or an independent or anything else. You don't have to put down your church name. You don't even have to put down Remnant Impact's name. If you put it down, are you going to get in trouble? Am I going to get in trouble? No, it's not. But the fact of the matter is that because this is our right to go, it is our right regardless of what our affiliation is and what organization we're with, period. That is our right as Nevada residents. And so if you just put name only, you're golden. You will have to go through a video presentation. This presentation is like 4 minutes long. And this is all part of their protocol. So I'm just walking you through what their protocol is so you know what to expect. But you'll have to go through that. That's about 4 minutes long. They're going to go through the do's and the don'ts with you as well. And I'm just kind of prepping you for that as of right now. You will have to sign a legal acknowledgement form, which basically says, I will not take pictures. I will not use my phone. I will not, disturb the workers and et cetera. And you just sign off on that. Then you're going to receive a button. So on that button, on the back of that button is going to be a number. And your button has to be worn at all times unless you are leaving the premises. Once you're leaving the premises, that button has to be turned in before you can exit out of the building. Okay, so when you get in, after you've gone through all of that, you will receive a schedule. So it will look something like this, and it'll tell you what rooms are going to be open from what time to what time. This schedule is always going to change based off of how many ballots are coming in, how many workers they have, who needs to go on break, who doesn't need to go on break, and et cetera. But typically, they'll give you whatever the schedule is for the day. If they're feeling super generous, they'll actually give you the schedule for the week. The other thing that you're going to get is this pamphlet. So this is the mail ballot process quick guide. When you get this, hold on to this, because this is going to be a lifeline, and we'll talk about it in a little bit. But you're going to get this pamphlet, and they're also going to get an ambassador. So these ambassadors, typically, what we've seen in previous years is you could maybe get 1 or 2 ambassadors, and that should be sufficient. But what we just experienced in June is that they're putting about 7 ambassadors on 1 person. Yeah. So we'll talk about that right now. So your ambassador, just so that you guys know, does not like you. They do not like you. They are trained to not like you. They inform people. They inform their ambassadors to basically treat you in such an uncomfortable way that makes you want to leave. And we've had that happen, which is why I tell you, do not go in by yourself. Go in 2s, go in 3s, bring the whole neighborhood. It doesn't matter. My hope right now is that we can overwhelm the system to where they don't have enough ambassadors. If you ask for their name, they are not obligated to give you their name. In fact, a lot of the time they will tell you, I'm not telling you, and they'll do it smugly, or they'll give you no name at all, or they'll give you a fake name. So that was a very established pattern with them where they'll tell you, oh, my name is Mary. And then the thing is that once we go in, the more that they see our faces and the more that we're actually kind to them, even when they're trying to stonewall us and, make us feel uncomfortable, is the walls start breaking down. And then Mary just turned into Susie. You know what I mean? And so then we can actually get some real names going. These people are hired through a third party. These people are not hired through the elections department. They contract out. And so, again, these ambassadors, they have no obligation to give you any sort of customer service. In fact, your ambassador is not allowed to answer any questions for you. They're actually not allowed to be talking to you. Their job is to sit there and stare at you. They will stare at you, and as you're taking notes, they will watch you take notes. And if they're feeling really frisky, they'll stand right behind you and try to watch you take notes. That is how uncomfortable it can get. Again, they're required to watch you. You cannot leave the room without them. So if you have to use the restroom, if you have to answer your cell phone, they are going to be with you in every single room. They are going to take you, if the room closes down, they're going to take you to the next room. If you have to go to the bathroom, they're going to take you to the bathroom. They're going to take you back to the room where you can turn in your button and then walk out. So this is where we have to be comfortable with the uncomfortable, and this is why training is important so that you guys know what to expect so that we can be able to navigate through this. We don't want any surprises here. So observer conduct. For us, we are to be kind at all times. We are to be polite to them, even though it can be really hard. We are to follow the rules, whatever the rules may be. We need to be able to take notes because even if we are being mistreated, that is noteworthy to take. We need to make sure that we're documenting. We have the ability to ask questions. We have the ability to play dumb. And in fact, if you play dumb, how many of you guys can play dumb really well? That's my kind of people. So play dumb and use that to your advantage. Ask the questions. I don't understand this. I don't understand this. Why is this happening? Because the ambassador's not going to be able to tell you what those answers are. They're actually not allowed to talk to you at all. But what they can do is they can direct you to the elected official. The elected official is going to be the one, and there's only one in the whole entire building. So this dude is crazy. But with him, he's the only one who's going to be able to answer your questions. This guy, I'm sorry. Oops, I skipped one. So asking questions. So speak only to the election official. Ask questions right away. So if you have a question, make sure you ask it right away. And if you can't ask it right away, make sure that you're writing it down and documenting it. And then in the case that you actually need to send an email with your questions, make sure that you're documenting when you sent the email and when you got the response back. Okay? So with that said, this right here is your elected official. His name is Dan Kulin. This was the only picture that I can find off of the internet of him. He's been doing elections, I don't even know, for like 10 plus years or something like that. And this is the only picture that I could find. Anyways, he's also part of the Clark County Public Communications. So you'll see him you're going to see him running around a lot. He is notoriously known, if you have a question, notoriously known to say, I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but I cannot answer right now. And then what happens is he leaves. He tries to figure out what that answer is and how he can answer it to the most politically correct or whatever is going to be the most vague way so that they don't get in trouble, and then he'll come back and answer your questions. See, the thing is that when we go into the elections department and we're asking these questions, they are obligated to answer our questions, no matter how big or no matter how small it is. So he does have that responsibility to answer those questions, but because he has to answer them in an appropriate way that's not going to jeopardize the whole entire, function of our elections department, he has to go check what the proper answer he can give, even though he knows it. He knows it, and he wants to say it, but he has to figure out now, how can I say this without getting everybody in trouble? Or how can I say this without revealing any secrets? So he's going to be somebody that you're going to be talking to a lot. And he's actually, politics aside, he's actually really goofy. He's got very dry humor, and so hopefully with your kindness and your niceness, you'll actually maybe warm up to him or have him warm up to you, because he is, again, politics aside, he's a cool cat. All right, so one of the reasons why we have to be ever so nice and kind, and we have to make sure that we are, being aware of what our conduct is because there's a new Senate bill that came through last year for 2023, and that's SB Senate Bill 406. I'm actually involved in a lawsuit with this right now, which is one of the reasons why I can't particularly go inside of the elections department, but I can train all of you guys to be able to do it for me. And what this lawsuit right here says is that it will be, it makes it unlawful for a person to use, threaten, or attempt to use any force, intimidation, coercion, violence, restraint, or undue influence with the intent to interfere with the performance of duties of an elections official or retaliate against the elections official for their performance of such duties. You can read on for that. The issue with this particular bill that went through is these two words right here are not defined: intimidation and elections official. So as you guys are asking questions and as we're trying to get answers and as we're trying to understand our own election process, that right there can be deemed as intimidation. If we're demanding to have answers, and when I say demanding, I mean nicely, to have answers or trying to figure things out, and they feel threatened by that, that can be intimidation. Election official is not defined as what that is. Is it just Dan Coolin in this department, or is it the ambassadors too? Or is it the election workers? If you looked at somebody, with squinty eyes because you can't see and you forgot your binocular glasses, they might see that as you're intimidating them because you're staring at them with your little squinty eyes. Does that make sense? So because these things are not defined, now we have to sue the state, which this bill or this lawsuit right now is sitting in the 8th Circuit because there is no absolute interpretation of what this is. And without that, that's left to political interpretation, which can be a bit more harmful than anything. And with this bill, the other thing that comes with it too is that if you were to cross any lines or, offend anybody, it will be a Class C felony. That can be a Class C felony, which results up to $5,000 in fines and can be 1 year in prison. That's how ridiculous that is, and a little bit extreme for elections, I think. So let's talk about some prohibited acts. So observers can't. You cannot have food in the observation areas. Drinks are allowed, but again, they require a lid, or you can bring in a water bottle. You're not going to be able to bring in your big, heavy, stainless steel flask or your glass bottles, but you can bring in a water bottle, a plastic water bottle. You cannot leave any areas unless you are escorted by the ambassador. So if you try to sneak away and try to run away from them, they're going to chase you down. And then unfortunately, we're not going to have our cameras to be able to record that and put that on YouTube. But you can't talk or yell at election staff. Right? You cannot disrupt their area of work. So what we've seen in past is we had somebody who was a little bit more passionate about her observations, and she, instead of going to the election official, instead of going to Dan or writing a report or anything, she literally walked up to the glass and knocked on it and told him, "You can't do that." Don't do that. Just write it down. Let us figure the rest of it out. Let us be able to work this out in an administrative and legal way so that we have more foothold to make these changes. If you take it upon yourself, I don't have money to bail you out, okay? And that Class C felony, that's a lot. You don't want to have that. And really, it's not worth it. There's a lot of other things that we can be doing instead of getting ourselves in trouble in that way. Okay, so again, you can't have your phone or your camera or your computer or anything like that. There will be times where a room will be shut down, and sometimes all of the rooms will be shut down at the same time. They'll migrate you all into one area, and even though you're not observing a room, you are still not allowed to have your phone out. Does that make sense? Because even in that case, the security will come out, they're going to flag people down, and then all of a sudden now there's this big old chaos that's happening in the lobby because we're waiting to get into a room, and then so-and-so just took out their phone and took a picture of the wall for whatever reason. So don't do that. You cannot advocate for or against candidates, parties, or ballot questions, no matter how much we really want to, but we cannot do that. Again, you cannot electioneer or campaign inside of the elections department. It's just not allowed. You cannot disrupt. So again, this is the same place that we're going to be for myself and for Calvary Red Rock here at this church. We will be a ballot drop-off location. I take these ballots and I take them straight over to the elections department. In that case, because it will be open to the public, you are not allowed to be talking to anybody that's coming through to drop off ballots or their ballot. You are only there to observe what is happening on the inside, not to talk to the people. You are allowed to talk to each other when you guys are inside of the rooms, but I'm going to tell you this. So as you guys are talking to yourselves inside of the rooms, because you are able to do that, obviously keep it low. You know, if you have to pass each other notes, that's one thing. But I'm going to say this. Make sure that you're aware of your conversations, because the other people that are in there that are also not part of this group are of the other party. And a lot of them coming in from out of state are lawyers. And they're looking for any reason to shut down whatever our case is. Does that make sense? So whatever it is that you're like, hey, Susie, did you see that? That's not right. Whatever that is, don't let them hear it. Because again, you guys are super ninja spies. Don't let them hear it to where now they know what it is, and then they can come against you for whatever that looks like. Keep everything as much as you can, confidential, so that we can make these reports to continue on making the adjustments that are necessary so that we can have a proper election. Okay, so this one is a little bit difficult. Observers, you're not allowed to view the personal information of a voter, a voter's ballot, or selections on a voting machine. That's one of those things that you're also going to sign in that disclosure form when you first check in. But here's the thing. When you're going into rooms like signature verification and you get to actually see what the signatures are, you're going to be able to see who those people are. When you go into ballot duplication, should you be able to observe that? You're going to see whoever this person is and what their votes are, right? Because it has to be duplicated. We'll talk about that in a minute. So all of that to say, the things that we're watching out for is not necessarily the voter, but the people who are processing the vote. So just keep that in mind. Another thing you're going to sign on the disclosure form is that observers may not listen to any conversation between election workers or between a voter and election worker. You're going to have to sign off on that. If you hear something, say something, write it down in your notes, let us know about it. Again, when you have 2 or more people that are reporting on the same thing, there is more accountability in that, right? So that's something that you're just not going to be able to avoid. And we'll talk about some of those things that we've overheard when it came down to observing the elections. And then, of course, you can't argue or challenge decisions of an election personnel. So, again, our conduct needs to be nice and kind and polite. And whatever arguments or whatever injustices we see, we write it down, we hand it to the lawyers, and we continue to fight forward. Right? All right, so how are you guys feeling? Excellent, because you got this, right? There we go. Gave you a little sweet encouragement there. So the next thing, this is what the life of your ballot is going to look like. This nice little chart was actually provided by the Washoe County, because of course Clark County doesn't provide for anything. So I actually had to do some extra digging up north. And so this is the life of your ballot from the time that it comes in, the receipt of the ballot. Now, one of the things, and we'll talk about this towards the end of our training today, is that there is no chain of custody. So as these ballots are coming in, one of the first rooms that you get to observe is called the Agilis room. That is where stacks of ballots are going to start coming in. They're going to go through a machine, and it's going to separate them out into different precincts while simultaneously scanning for signature verification. If your signature verification is not coming up or it's red flagged or whatever, it'll get kicked out and it'll go into the signature verification room. Right? But that's the first little step of all of this is going to be Agilis. So that looks like the first 5 things. If once it goes into signature verification, what happens there is you have it's supposed to be a bipartisan team that's looking at everything, and they're either agreeing or disagreeing that the signature matches what is on record. Mostly what is on record is what is on record at the DMV. Now, sometimes they use other things like bills or even your own voter registration, but mostly they use what's on the DMV, right? And so I don't know if you remember a couple of months ago, you guys got the signature verification cards. Well, because here in the state of Nevada, we pass ballots through based off of your signature verification. That is how we confirm your identity. And so that's what they use to cross-reference what is what. By the way, question 7 on your ballot is for voter ID. Vote yes. Now, the second portion of this, as it moves through, it's going to, you're going to be able to observe different parts of it based off of what room is going to be open. But from there, your ballot is going to be in the counting board. It's going to be counted out. It'll be extracted from the envelope, and then from the envelope, it'll be separated out. If there's anything going on with your ballot as far as any coffee marks or any rips or any extra markings, then what they'll do is they'll put it through ballot duplication. From ballot duplication, they're going to scan it up, and so you'll have the scan of your ballot on one side of the computer, and then you'll have an empty ballot on the other side of the computer, and then that's when they start filling in the ballot for you that way. Yeah, that happens. Now, if all else goes well and everything gets extracted, everything's fine, la-di-da-di-da, what will happen is it'll go into tabulation. If there's anything wrong with your ballot, it does go into adjudication. That is something that I don't recommend for anybody to do. In 2022, there was an epidemic up north that was going on with some dude, his name was like John something, but he was telling everybody to cross off everything on your ballot and just circle it in so that it goes into adjudication. Don't do that. Please don't do that. That is a terrible idea, because once it goes into adjudication, then it's up to their interpretation of what your vote was supposed to mean. Now, do you really trust them to interpret what you wanted? No. So that was a terrible, terrible idea, and we had to fight that down here to make sure that didn't spread any further than it was up north, but they had their own issues up there. And then after that, it'll go into tabulation. Tabulation is where they start counting the ballots, and you'll see there's an election worker. He walks around from every tabulation machine, and he puts in a thumb drive, and he puts in a thumb drive, and he puts in a thumb drive. Do we know what's going on with that thumb drive? No, we don't. But we can count how many times that it goes into one machine. We can count how many times the ballots go through repeatedly. That way, is it duplicating those votes? We don't know. Is it counting it twice? Is every time you put that thumb drive into that machine, adding extra votes into that? That part we don't know. But what we can do is, 1, ask the questions, right? And 2, we can document everything. Because what happens is, you may not know. There's going to be days that you go in there and you're like, I didn't see anything that we were talking about in training. Totally fine. Amen. Awesome. Because I really want it to come down to a point that we don't have to do this anymore. Well, actually, no, I take that back. You need to do this. Every election, we need to be able to do this. But I'd like to come to the point where I don't have to train people to do this, that we actually already know what our civic duty is, and we know what the life of our ballot is, and we know what the election process is, because we're that educated. Because that's the residents of Nevada, and so we don't have to go through these anymore. But I just lost my thought. It'll come back, I'm sure. Anyways, we're going to move on. Okay, so remember when I was telling you, hold on to that pamphlet, that mail-in process quick guide? That is going to be your lifeline right there, because inside of that is going to tell you all of the rooms, things to expect, how everything works. And what we've seen in this right here, when you get it, is that it gives you a lot of things to look for. So in these things, as far as this quick guide, it says for manual signature verification, it needs to be bipartisan teams, right? Pretty much every room should have bipartisan teams. And I'm going to just throw this out there. That's not the case. We've seen over and over and over again that these people do not represent bipartisan teams. And in fact, we've gone to the point where we are in signature, ballot duplication. Sorry, let's go back. We were in ballot extraction, 2 people at a team, at a table, viciously or maliciously, however you want to say this, took a ballot out of the envelope, ripped the ballot, and then it purposely had to go into duplication. And in duplication, there was only one person doing it. So there was no bipartisan team because it was only one person. We've seen it to where there's two people that are Democrats that are sitting at a table. We've seen it where there's two people that are non-affiliated, NA, or nonpartisan. You know, those are the things. If it has to be bipartisan, then it has to be bipartisan. And part of the reason why we come in is to make sure that these things are actually bipartisan, right? Because they go on to break together. They get to talk to each other all that they want, inside and outside of the rooms. We don't have that chance to talk with them. The only thing that we can do is hold them accountable for what is actually listed on their own quick guide. So you can use this against them for that. So again, time and time again, it's gonna say bipartisan. So that's definitely one thing that you want to look for. The other thing that you want to look for too. Oops, this is the back of your ballot, by the way, or not ballot. I'm sorry, pamphlet. So again, the bipartisan is there, but also one of the things that it says right there is that mail ballot processing starts 15 days prior to election days, but votes are not tabulated until election day. Then why is tabulation open, and why are they already counting ballots? So we can document that. And then we scan things in, such as whatever our notes are, and we attach this as a scanned-in document and say, per the quick guide process, you know, and then we can cross-reference that with whatever NRS is available. This isn't supposed to happen. You're not supposed to be tabulating, but yet tabulation is open, and we can scan in the schedule, and this is what was happening. They were already tabulating the votes, and they have that on that thumb drive. So things to look out for. So other things to notice, I mean, we kind of talked about signatures being verified. So when we were in signature verification room, another thing that is super common, and again, these are third parties that are being hired in signature verification room is two people are sitting here, and they share a computer, right? And all you have to do is just tap. Tap to accept the signature. Tap, 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 tap. They weren't not even looking. They were engaging in conversations. They were sitting there eating. And in fact, their boss had come in and said, don't worry about if the signature matches. Just keep going. Oh, yeah. So then we had to write that into a report and send that out, right? So those are things to be watching for. Signature verification is an important part of confirming your identity. If that's the only thing that we use to confirm your identity, then those signatures better match. So be on the lookout if you're in signature verification room. In the counting room, again, are both parties represented at the table? They have to be represented. And then are your questions being answered? Again, it could be the stupidest question. It could be the biggest question. It doesn't matter. The question is it getting answered? And if Dan says, oh, send it to me in an email, then make sure that you're documenting, you know, I sent this at this time on this date, and this is when he responded, so that we can have a proper paper trail of what is happening in there. Okay, so things to take notes on. So time in and time out. Like, what time did you arrive? What time did you enter the room? Including any room changes. Did any of the rooms shut down early? Did the whole entire elections department close early? Because that'll happen too. You know, if there's not any ballots that need to be processed, then they'll shut down early, and they've shut down as early as 4 or 5, and they're supposed to be open until 7. So they'll shut down early, and then when they shut down, they kick you out. How many ambassadors did you have? Again, appropriate number would be like 1. Maybe 2 if they're feeling frisky, but 7 on 1 person, completely inappropriate. In fact, that's observation intimidation, which should be filed as a report. If you're able to get those names, being nice, whatever that looks like, even if they give you a fake name and you're like, okay, I know your name's not really Billy Joe, but you know what? I'm going to go ahead and write down your description. Billy Joe is 5'6", and he, was a darker complexion with brown eyes and black hair, was wearing this, that, or the other, whatever that looks like. Because wherever the report goes, whether it goes to the elections department, Secretary of State, whether it goes to our lawyers, they're going to have everything backtracked to who that person was. At this time, we were in this room with this guy who claims his name was Billy Joe, and he looked like this. The election officials are going to be able to point him out. Whatever the worker behaviors and their tasks are. So again, if they're just sitting there and eating and just clicking buttons and not paying attention, those are things that are noteworthy. You want to take those notes. If you are on the closing shift, which we'll kind of talk about that, but the elections department is open from 8 a.m. until 7 p.m. And so if you're like, oh, I'm going to come after I get off of work, and so I'll be there from like 5 to 7, great. Whatever time you get in there, you want to document what time you're being escorted out, right? Then what I always tell people, and this is going to look a little bit different because now we have those darn fences, but swing around the back. So if you are done, even if you did the morning shift or the afternoon shift or whatever that looks like, whenever you're done with your shift, swing to the back and just take a look at what is happening in the back. Is there big semi trucks coming in? Is there Penske trucks coming in? Is there a car coming in from Washington, right? We want to see what's going on in the back. Are they receiving things? Are they not receiving things? Is everything closed? Is it open? As you're taking notes, you may think that, okay, today was really boring. This is all that I saw, blah, 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 blah. But as we're reviewing your guys' notes, we see the bigger picture. So you think that you may have said nothing, but really you saw this one thing that correlated with what this person saw and what this person saw, and now we can triangulate that there is an issue right here and we need you to file a report. Does that make sense? So there's no one detail that's too big or too small. We need all details as much as possible. And so, yes, be as detailed as possible. Your notes could become legal evidence. So marking the date, the times, and whatever names is super essential. Now, for this next portion, I just kind of want to show you, these are some real life notes that were taken. This person, documented what time that they arrived. They waited until their break, went to sign in at 10:45, went to the central accounting board. They documented everything as far as what they saw, where they went, what time that they went, and so on. So I'm just giving you this as an example so that you guys, there wasn't a whole lot of information that we could really, retrieve out of this one, but it is a good example on how to take notes. Now, this is another way, because I know not everybody has really great handwriting, and in these cases, these were some people who didn't have great handwriting, and so if you go home and you want to type them out and email them to me, that's fine. If you want to take a picture of your notes, you can, send it over to me. If you just want to give me your notes, I'm fine with that too. Most of the time, I can read chicken scratch pretty well. But for this person, let's see, asked the ambassador Candy, that was the name that this person had gotten, if they could go to the first room of the ballots. They saw people in the room as we walked past it. She says she didn't think so. There was nothing going on in there anyways. Turns out there was things that were going on. So again, when you get escorted out of a room, if a room closes down and they're still working behind the scenes, they're not allowing you to observe that room. Why? What is it that they're doing, and why are they doing that without allowing observers in? All stuff to be documented, right? So that we can see the bigger picture of what's happening. Again, I asked Dan if a couple of us observers can go back into the first room because she noticed that there was actually people that were in there working, and he said no. Actually, he said he doesn't know, but he can go ask. He's notorious for that. But there was no response until 3 p.m. where he came back and he said that they can't go in there. There's nothing to observe, even though they were still working. So again, when you guys are writing reports, whatever that looks like, whatever your journals, your note-takings are, you can send your notes to ccnvelections@gmail.com. So that is a email that is specific to Justice Elections. So I'm using this email so that I'm not getting bombarded and I miss anything. But whatever you guys, write, you can take a picture, send it to this email. You can scan it in, you can type it in, do whatever you got to do. But you can send it to that particular email that's going to be specific just for the elections. But if you guys have any other questions, feel free to email me at alex@remnantimpact.org. I hope that's not going to be too much confusion, but I do want to make sure that if you guys do have questions, that it's going to my direct email, and anything that is elections related can go to the elections email, if that makes sense. Okay, so when we're getting all of your journal entries, we go through, we look at everything, and then a lot of the times, we'll say, okay, Sally, we're going to have you fill out a violation report. And so a violation report looks like this. This is an election integrity violation report. This is also available on the Nevada Secretary of State site right here. So as you're going to be filling this out, that top section right there, you're going to fill out with all of your personal information. But that bottom section right there, you're actually going to click that button or, cross X, put an X right there on other. And then in that box right there, you're going to put in the address, 965 Trade Drive in Clark County. You can put in just like a brief mention of chain of custody or something with the machines or the election workers, meaningful observations. You can put anything of that. Now, on the other half, and this is not just a one-part paper, on the other part of the paper, it looks like this. And so in that section right there, section 3, this right here is where you're going to put that detailed description. Or if you have those notes, you can always put see attached, and we can attach those notes that you had taken from that day to the violation report. Now, at the bottom right here, this date right here is not going to be the date that you're observing, but the date that you're submitting. Okay? Okay. So here are some of the things that we had to file for in 2022. So at the Clark County Elections Department, located at 965 Trade Drive, I observed in the counting board that the representation of Democrats was not present, as by the buttons on their shirt. This is a direct violation of NRS 293.8877, stating that all parties are to be represented and included in the process. Now, this is a great example right here, because this isn't just about the conservatives going in. This is anything. If you see anything, even if the Democrats are not represented, that's still wrong. That is still wrong. This is not, oh, there's no Democrats, yay, we're just going to continue on. If it's not there, we need to report on it, because at the end of the day, it's our elections that need to maintain as integrous. And that right there, even though, we have our own personal feelings on that party, it doesn't matter. All parties need to be represented. At the bottom right there, it says that I had heard a team ask a supervisor in the signature verification room about signature comparison on a particular ballot. The supervisor told the team, in quotations, oh, the signatures do not have to match. Again, we file reports on those. So on the next one right here, I observed discrepancies in the signature verification room where signatures were not being cross-referenced with all other signatures on record. In fact, the supervisor of the signature verification room came in and told those who were cross-referencing that it was unnecessary. This is a direct violation, et cetera, et cetera. So again, these two reports are the same reports by different people. And that is ever so important, because again, if there's 2 of you versus them, you have more of the upper hand. If there's 3 of you, 4 of you, 5 of you, your whole neighborhood, you have the upper hand. But if there's only going to be 1 of you, then this is what happens. So in this particular, this happened in the primaries just this June, where I entered the ballot extraction and in an inspection room. I noticed 2 workers at number tables sitting across from each other. I noted table 9. 9 workers were bipartisan, Rep and Dem. Table 8 was bipartisan, Dem, and unaffiliated. That's what UAF is, unaffiliated. I noted tables 4, 5, 6, 10, and 13 were 2 Dem workers, plus table 14 had 2 workers that were labeled unaffiliated. I filled out a questionnaire and gave paper to the lead ambassador, Chandra, to give to Dan. Each have not heard back from with an answer. These workers were not fully, truly bipartisan. Now, in this case, this person ended up going to the elections department with a partner, but she was the only one who filled out a report. So then guess what happens? Sorry, there's not enough evidence to suggest what you've stated. So the importance of you going not by yourself isn't just so that you're not lonely or that you're, intimidated, but so that we have more than one documentation of what happened, because something like this could have been, that could have been easily fixed, but they're claiming that there is not enough evidence because she was the only one out of her party that ended up filling out this report. Does that make sense? So when you're going in there, I want you to know that not only are you committing to taking notes, but you have to be committed to making the reports and sending them accordingly, because this is something that we could have had a lawsuit on, and now we just lost that. Okay, so now this next section, this is a little bit more tricky. The night shift. Now, when you're doing the night shift, if you decide to do the night shift goes from 8 p.m. to 7 a.m. Things to bring. Always bring a friend. Number 2, bring coffee and lots of it, or an energy drink. This is the time that now, for all you super ninja spies, you can bust out your spyware. Okay? If you've got the newest Android, it's like a telescope in itself, so you can like zoom all the way in and you can see like every crater on the moon. That might be something that you want to bring. And then, of course, bring your notebook because you want to be able to take notes in that sense. So what we just experienced right now, and again, this is different than every election that we've gone through, even from the presidential preference primary in February, to the primaries in June, to now, there's always something different that's happening. And in this case, this right here, in Newly, has fences all around it. Now, this is the back where the loading docks are over here. This also, if you can see this little guy right here, that's also new. That's like a police camera scanner thing. Very strategically placed right there. So if you decide that you are going to want to do the night shift because you're super curious and you like the thrill of being out in the night and spying on people, this might be your cup of tea. So you're probably most likely not going to be able to get in, right? Because they're going to end up closing this off. The only people who are going to be coming in at this point are probably going to be the truck drivers and anybody who has ballots. Right behind here, that's where the ballots are going to be taken. All the way to the right. Those are two docks right there. Those things go up, and then they go down, and then they go up. That's where all of the ballots are going to be dropped off right there. Now, right there in the Cox parking lot, that right there is open. So if you go in at 8 o'clock at night, there's no cars that are over there, you could typically park right here. Because there's a fence right here, you may or may not really have a good visual to see. Now, if you have that like super Android camera, you might be able to see pretty far. But in any case, the other option that you can go to watch is going to be closer on this side right here. But this is good, and this right here is the closest, is on the sidewalk by Riviera Street. This area right here is going to be really difficult for you to see because it's actually far away. Actually, I should have changed that because this right here is actually all staff parking. This right here is all staff parking, so there's going to be cars and cars and cars and cars right here. Where you're going to end up going, I don't know, but that is an option. I'm putting it out there. The other option is going to be right here, but again, strategically placed. Let me go back because I don't know what happened there. Strategically placed is this guy right here. And that's like literally blocking that view. And I was just in there last week turning in voter registrations. So I'm like, oh, brother Batman, this is not going to be fun to do overnight shifts to be able to observe anything because they're literally trying to block that out. Now, the other thing, too, with that is that there's going to be Police. There's going to be police presence. Now, when we did this in 2022, we did this and there was police. There wasn't police. I'm sorry. There wasn't police, but the police ended up getting called on us, which was totally fine. This right here, just so you guys know, is public property. It's not government property. This is paid by the city, so this is public property. We have the ability to go on to premises. And so when the cop had come and he was talking to us, it was 3 girls, and then we had we called one guy in on an emergency, what's going on, right? But it was just us, and the cops ended up coming. We had our lawsuit, so I was given the lawsuit. I'm like, listen, we're allowed to be here, we're allowed to observe. He's like, well, you're gonna have to take that to the judge. I'm like, look in the back because the judge already signed it, right? And so he's like, well, they called and da-da-da this. Anyways, long story short, what the cop ended up telling us. Oh, wait, going back. What the cop ended up telling us is that as long as we are walking, we're not loitering, because they were going to try to charge us for loitering. You can't loiter on public property, but whatever. So we just walked, and we walked, and we walked in circles, and we were able to see basically what was going on all around the building, because as it's dark time, they have to use the lights, and now we can see through the windows. So... is that going to happen now? I don't know. I really don't know. So this last week, the gates, everything threw me off, and I was like, oh, goodness. So we'll find out. But, some things to know, obviously, the time that you arrive there, obviously, but also the time of arrival for the vehicles that are dropping off ballots. What kind of vehicle is it? Is it a moving truck? Is it a semi? Is it a personal? Right? What are the license plates? Are they coming in from Nevada? Are they coming in from, Georgia or New York or anything like that? So as we're walking around and we're viewing everything, do you want to know what the number 1 license plate is that we saw? No, that was a trick question. It was actually Nevada. But we did. We saw California. We saw Oregon. We saw Utah. We saw Arizona. What in the baloney are all these cars doing at an elections department that is not of their own state, right? But again, so these are the things that we have to look for. Those cars, not only were they parked and are they the ones that are working, but they're also the ones that are dropping off ballots. Where did those ballots come from? Where are they picking them up from? That part we don't know, because in the state of Nevada, we have no chain of custody. And because we have no chain of custody, I'll tell you this funny little story. But there's a girl that was working with me. She's yay high. She's super little. At the time, she was 21. And she was doing election observations, and she saw this car leaving, and she wanted to know where, or not the car, the truck, like a Penske truck leaving. And so she wanted to follow it. And I'm like, don't you dare follow that truck. And she's like, no, just stay on the phone with me. So I stayed on the phone with her for about an hour while she's chasing this truck, this Penske truck that's trying to just go through McDonald's, minding his own business. I'm like, leave, get away from him. Anyways, I don't recommend for anybody to do that. Please don't do that. Again, I don't have the money to bail you out, and who knows what was really happening in that Penske truck. I don't know. But anyways, all of that to say, those are things to look for in the nighttime. Again, things are going to start changing. And I'm not entirely sure what that is really going to look like as far as being able to look and see what was happening at night. Because, again, Central Processing Center, this is the only center that we have in all of Clark County. So we also have to take into note that there was Penske trucks that were coming in from Laughlin, 2 o'clock in the morning, dropping off ballots, also in Penske trucks, also in red vehicles, personal vehicles, and et cetera. All things that we can take note. If you are approached by a cop or anybody else and they're telling you to leave, just leave. Just leave. I do not want anybody to get in trouble to the point where you guys are going to be arrested or be put, on the television because you were a disruptor or agitator or anything like that. It's not, I don't want to say it's not worth it, but there's other ways that we can fight against it that doesn't require you to go to jail for it. Does that make sense? So anyways, this is just the night shift notes. This is what we ended up doing. This was a report that we ended up filing. And then, of course, after it got over to the Secretary of State, the judge, we got a little bit more leeway, a little bit more grace going forward in our observations because we had the right to be there. We have a lawsuit. The judge signed off on it, and we get to observe everything that we get to observe. So fights like that are going to happen. But we keep pressing forward, and we do it with a smile on our face, right? All right, so that's pretty much that's everything that you can expect. That's everything to be able to look for. And of course, as things develop, there's always going to be something more. Your notes are going to help develop this training program into something even more than it is today. Hopefully we won't have to do this again, but we're here to fight forward when we do. So how you would sign up for your shifts. I use this program. It's called Sign Up. The shifts are broken up into 2 hours. So you can scan the QR code right there. Right above it is the link. So if you need to type that in, you can do that. And you can pick your shifts. So shifts start from 8 o'clock in the morning until 7 o'clock at night. And then it goes into the night shifts. So if that's something that tickles your fancy, you can sign up for that. And again, it goes by 2 hours. If you can do 1 shift, awesome. If you can do 2 shifts, 3 shifts, if you're like, hey, I want to dedicate my whole life here, I'm all for it. All for it. And then again, I want to encourage you, don't do it alone. Go in with a friend. You can bring, a friend, 2 friends, 3 friends, whatever that looks like. But that's what we're going to do. This, by the way, when you're signing up for these shifts, the elections department doesn't know. The elections department doesn't know. This is what I'm able to see is where do we need coverage. So if we have like this gap that's in the middle of Wednesday and we don't have anybody signed up for that, that tells me that I'm going to have to be on the phone and calling to see who's going to be able to do that. Does that make sense? This is only for us as a team. When you sign up for the shift, you're also going to see what is open, what is available. I mean, everything's going to be available, but what is open, what is available, who's signing in. Oh, I want to sign up for the 2 o'clock shift. Great. There's 2 other people there. Awesome. So then you know that you're not alone, but I still recommend taking your neighbor with you, your mom, your kid, whatever. Well, don't bring your kid. You have to be 18 or older. But nonetheless, whatever that looks like for you. So this is just between us. The elections department doesn't know who's coming in. But again, the goal is to make sure that we have more observers than they have ambassadors. And the goal is to be as kind as possible because we want to be able to get as much information without them feeling that they're guarded. We already know that they don't like us, but they don't need to know that we don't like them. Okay? All right, so with all of that said, do you guys have any questions?